Hey everyone, I already discussed introduction of DBMS where I discussed what is DBMS, abstraction, instances and schema, data model. There are different type of data model like relational model, ER model, object-oriented data model, semi-structured data model, network model. So from all these next we'll discuss entity relationship model. So what is entity relationship model? Mainly it is designed for the logical structure of an enterprises. Suppose for a university, for a hospital, we can design the logical structure by entity relational model. The ER data model was developed to facilitate database design by allowing specification of one enterprise schema that represent the overall logical structure of the database. So mainly we used ER model to show the logical structure of a database. ER model is useful for mapping the real world enterprises with the conceptual schema. So any real world enterprises we can map with its conceptual schema by the ER model. And ER model have mainly three components: entity set, relationship sets and attributes. We'll go one by one, and the diagram representation of ER model called as ER diagram. First, what is entity set? Before entity set, what is entity? Entity is a real world object which have some existence. Okay, means which we can distinguish from other, which have some behavior or some characteristic that we can distinguish from other, called as entity. An entity is a thing or object in the real world that is distinguishable from all other objects. It has some properties by which we can distinguish from other. Like a person is different from other person. Whatever you can see, like this pen, it's an entity. This mouse is an entity, or you can say this mobile is an entity. Anything in your around, all are entity. There are also two type of entity. One is abstract entity, another is the concrete entity. Concrete entity means which you can touch. Abstract entity means which you cannot touch. Okay, like bank account, courts, these are the abstract entities. For example, each person in a university is an entity. Each person is different from other person. Each person have some person ID through which we can differentiate. So an entity has a set of property, and the value of some set of properties may uniquely identify the entity. Okay, for example, for each person there are some person ID that will uniquely identify that person. Similarly, for each course there are course ID that will identify the course from other. There are two type of entities. Some are concrete such as person, book which you can touch. Some are abstract such as course, flight reservation which we cannot touch but it have the existence. Okay, so concrete entity and abstract entity. And entity set is a collection of similar type of entity. So in university all the instructor belongs to one entity set, or in a university all students belongs to one entity set. An entity set is a set of entity of same type that share the same properties or attributes. For example, entity set instructor that contain all the instructor, or entity set students that contain all the students of the university. Suppose this is a table. Here X is an entity, Y is an entity, Z is an entity, and each entity have some attribute like your ID, department, salary, and for each entity there are some value for each attribute. So these are the entities while these are the attributes. So an entity is represented by set of attributes. How can describe one entity? That's by the attribute. So possible attributes of instructor are ID, name, department name, salary. Each entry has a value for each of its attribute. So here is the attribute and here are the entity. So this is some value. Okay, for example, particular instructor may have this as ID, WU as name, finance for department name, and 90,000 for salary. So these are the value for the attribute of particular entity. And the ID attribute uniquely identify a person. Like one instructor have some different ID than other instructor. In US commonly we used SSN to uniquely identify. In India you can say Aadhaar card number. Aadhaar card number is linked with everything and every person Aadhaar card number is different, right? So can say Aadhaar card number uniquely identify one person from other. Let's see one figure of two sets, instructor and student. So first table is for instructor and this table is for student. There are some ID for each instructor and instructor name, and here are also some ID for each student and student name. You can add more attribute. For simplification, just ID and name for instructor entity set and for student entity set. In today's lecture, I discussed what is ER data model, what is entity set and what is attribute. In next lecture, I will discuss relationship sets. If this lecture is helpful for you, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you. Bye-bye.